After this movie, I could really need some jelly beans. Servus Freunde, my name is Jimmy Cage and right now I'm spending a lot of time watching a lot of new movies at the Vienna International Film Festival. And one that really struck a chord with me is Armageddon Time, written and directed by James Gray, whose last two films were the sci-fi drama Ad Astra and the adventure drama The Lost City of Z. One film set way in the future and one set 100 years in the past. His newest one, again, isn't set in present day, but in the year 1980. And yet, it's hard for me to imagine a movie more timely and relevant than this one. With all the things going on in the world right now, and especially in the United States, with the more important than ever midterm elections just a few days away, with Kanye West openly spewing anti-Semitic remarks on Twitter, the GOP embracing lies and hate at every corner, the former criminal president still holding his hate rallies and not being indicted yet, and here in Europe having to face the fact that Italy has elected a fascist government, Russia threatening with nuclear war, trying to get through the hard-hitting economic impact while people in Ukraine are literally trying to survive. And on top of all of that, the prospect of an absolute climate catastrophe. Humanity is responsible for all of this, and I wish I would exaggerate, but it's really bleak. In a way, it really feels like Armageddon Time, a term that was all present in the 1980s, the setting of the film as well, as the United States and the Soviet Union were still facing each other in the Cold War. Now, James Gray's film isn't about all these issues I just mentioned directly, and yet it kind of is, and it really hit me hard. Armageddon Time is a very personal coming-of-age story about a young adolescent Paul Graff, played wonderfully by the newcomer Banks Ripetta. He's living with his family, his parents played by Anne Hathaway and Jeremy Strong, and his older brother played by Ryan Sell, in a fairly nice middle-class apartment in New York City. One little detail that rather poignantly captures some of that childhood perspective is that he tells his friend from school that his family is super rich, while we also get to see that the family has to work hard to make ends meet and they can't just afford anything they want. While his older brother is going to an expensive private school, Paul attends a public one. Of course, in comparison to his friend Johnny, played by Jalen Webb, they are very rich. In comparison to him, Paul's life is fairly easy, and as a white boy, his path will be so much more forgiving and supportive. That doesn't mean that everything will be hunky-dory though. With his free, artistic spirit, he has a hard time at school, or rather, the school is failing to see his potential. He's suffering under his strict father, and his family is also of Jewish descent, the story of immigrants who decades ago had to flee from the Nazis. But in comparison to what it means to grow up as people of color in America, Paul and his family are more integrated into the system. They caught up with the so-called American dream, and later in the film Paul also has the privilege to go to the private school his brother is already attending, which is depicted as a very nightmarish facility. And not in the way of any particularly exaggerated cruel situations, but because the movie clearly shows how institutions like these are trying to breed next generations of rich and powerful white people, the so-called elite that should shape the future of this greatest country in the world. And there's certainly no place for black people there. Paul and his brother are lucky that their name Graff doesn't sound as Jewish as the one their grandfather carried when he arrived as a young boy. That grandfather is played by Anthony Hopkins, who is absolutely fantastic in the role. His character pretty much functions as the conscience of the film, as a strong moral compass. He and Paul share a very strong bond. He's the one who really understands him, understands his interest and talent for art, and understands that he's a very open young man who isn't yet corrupted by the system. All scenes with these two are just wonderful. What's so great about Hopkins' performance and the character he brings to life is that he openly speaks his mind. He knows that it's important to say things as they are. When Paul asks him why his great-grandmother came to the States, his grandfather tells him without hesitation that they wanted to kill her in their native country. And later, in what I think is the key scene of the movie, he tells him that he needs to be a Mensch. He needs to speak out if people are wronged. It is such a strong moment, and moments like these that are loaded with an urge to fight for a more just world and brought to life by such great actors, they just really get to me, and I was fighting to hold back my tears in the theater. Armageddon Time is a passionate plea to do better, but it's not romanticized. It's also showing their limitations and their own need to survive in this world, which is best portrayed here by the generation in between. The generation between Hopkins' character and Paul, the one of Paul's parents, who want to take part in this American dream. They see what's going wrong. When they see the future president Ronald Reagan on TV, they call him a schmuck, and when he gets elected, they are devastated. But they also want and need their own family to be cared for their children to have it better than they did. Armageddon Time is a remarkable film in many regards, one that doesn't succumb to nostalgia. It can have a somewhat warm atmosphere at times, the joys of childhood, discovering things for the first time, breaking the rules, stuff like that. But it also clearly shows how messed up things were back then, and how much these messed up structures lay the groundwork for the messed up present we are living in today. One might criticize that it can be rather direct and not very nuanced. Some story progressions do seem a little bit too contrived. In other aspects though, I not only didn't mind the directness, but kind of applaud it. For example, there's a scene in which Donald Trump's father Fred Trump is appearing in the movie, and all of this just makes this so much more haunting. There's a lot to digest here, a lot to discuss, but for now that should be enough. Armageddon Time is coming out in theaters and then also on streaming in the next weeks and months, and I highly recommend it. So in German I'd say, James Gray gelingt mit Armageddon Time ein bittersüßes, melancholisches und gleichzeitig schonungsloses und anklagendes Coming-of-Age-Drama, das mich sehr berührt hat. I give Armageddon Time 8 out of 10. It's more like 8.1, but I don't do that.
You're gonna be a Mensch, okay? Firm handshake. Okay, give me a hug.
Alright, that's it like always. Comment below and let me know what you think about Armageddon Time. And also, have you seen the previous films by James Gray? You can hit me up on Twitter, Instagram and Letterboxd, and also on Patreon, simply at @TheJimmyCage. And if you enjoyed this episode, please give me a thumbs up, share, subscribe, whatever you like. And make sure you hit that bell for all I have to tell.